Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Campus Lisa webinar series. My name is Angie Liu. I'm a project manager with the Information Technology Services Department, and I will be your show host for the hour. Before I introduce our session of the day, I have a few housekeeping items I have to go over. This session is being recorded with live captioning provided by Susan Thomas from eCaptions. It will be available to view on campuslisa.ucsc.edu. The presentation will be about an hour long with some time at the end for Q&A. Please use the Q&A window at the bottom of your screen to ask questions throughout the webinar, as chat will be disabled. You can also comment and upvote on other people's questions. Our session today is Email Overload, Practical Tools for Influencing Email Volume in the Telecommuting Age. Loralyn Cross, the Administrative Coordinator from the Office of Research Affairs, is here to share her insights with us today. Let's all give a warm virtual welcome to Loralyn.
Thank you so much, Angie. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Get the presentation loaded. And then also make sure that I have the chat up. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here and join me. I will be sharing some practical tools for influencing email volume in this day of telecommuting. And I really hope that you get a solid ROI on your time investment today, because I'm acutely aware that many of you have emails piling up in your inbox as we speak, which is exactly why you're here, right? So hopefully we can do something about that. We're going to go ahead and post a link in the chat to download a notes file version of this presentation if that's helpful. So go ahead and download that now. I have that in Word format. It's not super pretty, but I find that that's usually the easiest to go ahead and just text your, to go ahead and make your notes in there. So give everybody a second to do that if they'd like. And then just a quick note, I, like many of you, are working from home with small kids learning remotely, so hopefully nothing pops up, but there's never any guarantees there, so. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm an alumna of UCSD with a degree in human development, and I'm dating myself by admitting that I have nearly 2 decades of administrative, business, and operational experience at UCSD, spanning across departments from the medical center and health sciences to main campus. And I received both of my Lean Six Sigma green and black belts here at UCSD through Extension, which I highly recommend to anybody who's interested in process improvement. And I'll have links at the end of my presentation to point you in that direction if you're interested. My black belt project was focused on improving the workflow of the administrative team that supports the Vice Chancellor for Research and her leaders in the Office of Research Affairs. And a large part of that project was email management. So today I'll be sharing everything that I learned with all of you. So first we're going to do a little poll. How many emails do you receive in a day? Now, if you can access your email right now and you use Outlook, I'll go ahead and direct you how to get this number. Otherwise, you can just estimate. So if you can access your email pretty easily right now for this, go ahead and pop on over to it. And then in the search bar at the top, click within that search bar. Now, these screenshots are for the most recent version of Outlook, so this might look a little bit different if you have an older version. And I think, okay. So if you click on the current mailbox caret, it'll bring up a set of advanced options. And you would change this to all mailboxes if you happen to be somebody who manages multiple email boxes. And then under the received bar, you can either select yesterday for a quick answer or last week and divide by 7 to get a better daily average. And then once you've selected either yesterday or last week, you can click search at the bottom right, and the total number of emails that pop up for that search will tell you how many emails came up for it. So go ahead and select in the poll how many emails do all of you receive in a day? And I'm really curious to see what the span is like. I was checking with my husband to see what his is like, because he's in a totally different field, and he receives, you know, a drastically smaller number than I receive, but there's a lot of other work involved with what he does. So it'll be interesting to see across the board what everybody's are like. And remember, if you don't have access to your email and you're not able to quickly actually get the raw number, you can just estimate. So do we still have some answers coming in, or do we think we should close the poll now? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the poll. Okay, drum roll, please. Okay, that's a lot of emails. 48% of us get 50 to 100. 23% is 1 to 150. And then 19% is 150 to 200. That's a lot of emails, you guys. Lots and lots of emails. Okay, so I was just taking notes of those because I wasn't sure how it's going to turn out. It's really interesting. So in my current role, I'm responsible for both my own inbox as well as that of the Vice Chancellor. And the kind of volume that I experienced when I first started with Research Affairs about 2 years ago was staggering. At that time, I was receiving over 300 emails a day between both accounts, and over 75 emails were being sent. At first, I was completely overwhelmed. I couldn't even keep track of the items in the conversations, no less try to figure out how to find the time to action item anything. And before long, it was really clear to me that the current onslaught of emails was beyond problematic. Errors were being made, deadlines were being missed, countless crossed emails contributed to miscommunications all over the place. So I sat down and I ran the numbers, because I've been in the business long enough to know that just when things get so bad and overwhelming that I start to question my own sanity and my own capabilities, that's the most important, to sit down, dig into process, and look at it through my process improvement, continuous improvement goggles, applying that Lean Six Sigma methodology. And the result really put things in perspective for me, because if I was only working a 10-hour day, I was having to process more than 2 emails per minute, not including taking breaks for any reason, which obviously is not realistic. So not only did that validate my feelings of being overwhelmed, but I realized that at that point, if I had any hope of actually getting to the core duties of my job, I had to find a way to influence the number of emails that were flying around, and I had to change the culture of how we were using email within the administrative team. What I found was a lot of waste in emails, and I'm going to list some of the most common ones that I took note of, and I'm guessing that many of these are going to look familiar to you all. How about necessary content being spread out across numerous emails? What about something being sent twice because the sender can't remember if it's already been sent? Or somebody asking for something to be sent again because they don't remember having received it to begin with, or they're having a hard time finding it amongst the hundreds of emails that we have. And then crossed emails as people frantically rush to reply at the same time, causing multiple conversation split-offs. Are you familiar with the file or email that is sent out to a group for editing and comments, and then it results in multiple versions being edited at the same time, requiring merging in the end? As a side note on that one, thank goodness we have the compare and combine features in Microsoft Word now, which are super handy for that. So if you're not familiar with those 2 features, they're under the review tab of Word. So take note of that. But we shouldn't have to rely on those tools regularly. And we're not always using Word in track changes mode, so sometimes that wouldn't help anyway. And then finally, just missed deadlines. So some of you might be suspicious at this point. Well, sure, Loralyn, we might be able to do something about the emails that we send, but how does that help us with how many emails we're getting? Isn't that what this whole webinar is about? And the answer is exponential growth. This is a graph that I pulled from a Forbes article on the exponential growth of COVID cases with and without any intervention. And I like this analogy because I feel like email is the exact same way. I'm not trying to be dramatic here. I am absolutely correlating email volume to a terrible virus. Because the point here is that without intervention, email volume can spiral so out of control that we get to be knee deep into a situation that we can't see our way out of. So let's take a look at how this actually plays out. When I started to ask the 5 whys, which is a Lean Six Sigma tool, I found that we kind of get stuck in this self-perpetuating cycle of endless emails, which then exponentially multiply. Why did we send that email twice? Well, I couldn't remember if I sent it already, so it's better to send twice than not at all. Well, why didn't we pause to see if we'd already sent it? Well, I don't have time to stop and check. I'd never get through all my emails if I stopped to do that for every single one. Or I just have too many emails. I can't sift through them all to see if I'd already sent it. I wouldn't even know where to start. Well, if everyone is doing that, maybe that's part of the reason that we're getting so many emails to begin with. And so then we start to see the pattern. And this might not be what you wanted to hear, but when we don't take the time to make sure that we are limiting the emails that we're sending, we ourselves are contributing to the problem. Now, the history of lean manufacturing sort of began with Henry Ford, and I love this quote because the concept holds true for so many things, including email in this case. For our purposes, improved productivity means less emails, not more. And this is really important because I think in today's reality, where we all feel like we're failing a little bit, maybe feel the need to prove ourselves, show that we can be as productive and responsive at home as we are in the office, I think the tendency is to try to have the quickest response time possible. What I'm asking you all to consider today is if doing that is actually helping or harming our overall ecosystem at work. So the question is, how do we stop the cycle? And I have a bunch of key strategies that I've developed along the way and learned that are really important to success here. So here's a summary of my key tips, and I'll go into further detail about each one of these. First, a quick response time shouldn't be prioritized above all else. If errors are made at the expense of responding in a timely manner, it does more harm than good. Second, it's most crucial to slow down when you feel the most rushed. Taking time to get it right the first time will avoid defects, rework, and miscommunications. And then one good quality email with a summary of all the important information is worth its weight in gold. Multiple emails with bits and pieces really contribute to difficulty in email management, organization, and they just contribute to overall volume in general. Additionally, it's often more efficient to have specific people handle a certain task. Also, use the most efficient communication platform for your needs. We tend to overuse email because that's what we're used to, that's what's always open, we're always in it, but it's really not the best tool for a lot of different types of communication needs. And then finally, cut out all pleasantries. While it's important for rapport and relationship building, when things are really out of control, they just need to be cut out. So let's go ahead and take a deeper dive into each of these strategies. A quick response time is often associated with good customer service, but if errors are made at the expense of responding in a timely manner, you aren't really serving your customers' needs. Errors are often accepted as the cost of a fast-paced office with a high volume of work, but I'm here to tell you that we can and we should demand a higher standard of ourselves and others. This is not to say that you shouldn't update people or keep them informed. It's completely valid to check in and acknowledge a request or provide a necessary update. To break the cycle, you have to slow down to be able to speed up, which is sort of counterintuitive, right? But you need to cut down on the excessive, unnecessary emails in order to spend less time on email management in general, which will give you more time to spend on the actual tasks, which allows you to increase your overall productivity. That's the idea there. I cannot stress this one enough. It is most crucial to slow down when you feel the most rushed. This will take practice, You will need to force yourself to do this. It will absolutely require active thought and management, but taking the time to get it right the first time will avoid defects, rework, and miscommunications. And I know how tempting it is to try to rush and get to the next task or email when you know how many of them are still waiting to be dealt with. But if you get it wrong, it just takes more time to backtrack and fix it later. Now let's take a look at email from a quality quantity matrix. I'm sure you are all familiar with both the feverish emailer that I've defined here, as well as the apathetic emailer, right? We turn around for a second and there's 15 emails from the feverish emailer. And then you have to go through all of them before responding, because you know from experience that half of them are probably outdated and there's a more recent one that replaces half of the ones that are already in there. And then, of course, you have the apathetic emailer who you just know will need to be followed up with, because you know you're not going to get a response from them until you remind them like the third or fourth or fifth time. The thing to take note of here, though, is that if the emails that are sent are of a high quality, the quantity will actually manage itself. Emails that are sent will only be those that are required for productive work. And I know I've already said this, but I really want to highlight this point. One good email with a summary of all the important information that's necessary, that's needed, is far more useful than multiple emails with incomplete parts of what's needed to do the task. Don't send an email with one part of something if later today or tomorrow you're just going to have to send more information or an amendment or an update. Drafts are your friends here. Start a draft of an email so you can start to put together what you need, and then as you go, put it together further, and then finish it later. Set a reminder for yourself if you're worried that you'll forget about it, or just make a habit of visiting your drafts folder multiple times a day. For really important emails, sit on it for a day and review it with fresh eyes one last time before sending. Continuing with the quality over quantity theme, I'd like you all to consider the paths of each email task that you're involved with. Here, from Charlie's perspective, it seems like the same amount of work, but they don't realize the burden on others that really adds to the total volume of emails. Obviously, we only have influence over our own scope, so we can't do too much about, levels above us, but we can consider those below us, those across the aisle. And if we do have a really good relationship with that person directly above us, we can have this conversation about the greater good kind of thing. And then I want to introduce the concept of the warm and cold transfer, borrowing this term from telemarketing. Well, we can apply the same idea to emails. So instead of a cold handoff telling somebody who to contact, which then requires them to reach out separately, you can make the introduction by email, and then people can be moved to blind copy and dropped off the chain as needed, which is more of a warm handoff. This is kind of a 2-for-1 here, because it's often not only more efficient, but more friendly and cordial. So in this example that I listed, the warm handoff is more inclusive, and it only takes 3 emails total compared to the other email chain, which required 8 emails for the same end result. And it looks like we have a little question here. So what about an email that needs to include many details? This is long, and I hear many will open and immediately mark as unread because it's too long to read. That's a really good question. And I would say that those emails are problems specifically when we have so many emails to get to that we can't take the time to get to that email. So I would say if we work on the overall ecosystem, in that case, hopefully we get email volume down to a point where somebody feels like they can take the time to read the entire email and get to everything that's there. So it's definitely a balance. And then of course, compiling an email that needs that many details, that's when I go back to suggesting that you take the time, revisit it, maybe even have somebody else look at it. Try to really be sure that you're you're minimizing what is needed and what's necessary, and that you're making it as brief and concise as possible to decrease the likelihood that somebody is going to miss something that's important as part of it. Okay, now on to specialized tasks. Not specializing tasks prioritizes a quick response time and ensures that everyone is cross-trained, but there are some major drawbacks. You typically have to include more people on the initial ask, and unless you have a process in place to address it, it can be unclear who's taking lead. Sometimes you have the added cost of multiple people handing off different parts of the same task, and of course there's a big risk in duplicating efforts, stepping on toes, or on the flip side, dropping balls entirely because everyone assumes that somebody else is doing it. When you specialize tasks though, you decrease the number of people involved in a task, which decreases the number of emails sent total and just about eliminates any confusion about who's responsible for it. The only downside here is the need to cross-train and have a backup plan for urgent items, which is typically something that most teams should be doing anyway. Now, of course, this isn't always the answer, but for many simpler processes that don't have a queue or a ticketing system to route and assign tasks to a team, often specializing is going to be more efficient. In this example that I highlight in the table, one standardized letter of support was completed twice by 2 different people spanning 7 different emails. And now that same task is handled by 1 person, so only 2 emails are needed. Well, looks like we have another question. Do you delete emails? Which ones do you delete? I absolutely delete emails. I love deleting emails. I try to delete emails that I'm not going to have to reference because those add to overall volume. The ones that I keep, I think critically about. And so for a conversation that has multiple emails in the conversation, I keep the parts of the conversation that I might have to reply directly to from that part of the conversation, or that I might have to attach as proof or documentation somewhere else, because I don't want to have to doctor an email or send an email that has more than I want. So I kind of look at it from that perspective and just keep the ones that I'm going to want to come up in a search, that I want to reference later, or that I need for documentation. Anything else, pretty much, I try to delete to cut down on the overall volume. Many of you, like me, if you've been here for many, many years, even a decade or two, you've got thousands and thousands of email over the years. And so searching for emails can be, quite a hassle. Okay. So this slide is quite busy, but, and you can go back later to review the details of it. And of course, these are just guidelines, but the key here is to try to use the most efficient communication platform for your needs. We tend to overuse email because that's what we're used to, and that's what we're always working in, but there are so many other communication options available. Yes, it can be hard to learn a new system or get used to a new tool, but email is not really the best tool for a lot of different types of communication needs, so it's really worth sorting out. In Lean Six Sigma, we refer to the bottleneck as a step in the process that's limited by the volume that it can handle. And if email doesn't fit that definition, I don't know what does. If email is the bottleneck, the solution is to use other methods of communication to decrease the volume of emails so the email itself isn't the bottleneck. The specific solutions for each team are going to be a little bit different, but hopefully this table provides some helpful guidelines to get you started on determining the best combination of communication methods for your needs. There's no one size fits all here. At the end of the day, whatever works best for your team is the right answer. But the important question to ask is, how can we complete the desired task with the least amount of necessary communication without over relying on one specific tool? And last but not least, drastic times really do call for drastic measures. Initially, you want to stop any and all what I like to call the throwaway nicety emails. These are the okay, thanks, and sounds good, and sure, anytime. These are important for rapport and relationship building, but when things are really out of control, they just need to be eliminated. This is low-hanging fruit for cutting waste in the Lean Six Sigma world. It's easiest to cut these out amongst a small team that you work closely with, because you guys can discuss it, give each other a heads up that you're going to be doing it, agree on it as a team so nobody takes it personally. That's the biggest concern that I find people have with this is, oh, but people are going to think I'm so rude. I'm not, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying thank you. I'm not being nice. But if you agree on it as a team, then nobody takes it personally. The idea here is that over time, you develop an understanding with your team that enables you to shift your habits along with the ever-changing currents of your workflow. And hopefully, when workloads are really high for your whole team, you'll automatically cut back on these types of emails. And then you can take time to come back to them when things level out and slow down again and you have a chance to catch your breath. A lot of these tips are about the culture of how you use email. So here's my challenge to you. Examine and analyze any email chain that has more than 5 replies to it and consider if any of the strategies that I've introduced today might have helped cut down on the number of emails in that chain. My guess is that once you start looking at emails from this perspective, you won't be able to unsee it. Like once you notice the clock ticking, that's all you can hear, right? And then feel free to reach out to me and let me know what you notice and experience so we can geek out together on it. So that's what I have for you today. I also wanted to provide some resources that might be helpful. I mentioned Lean Six Sigma throughout my presentation. Lean Six Sigma as a methodology is used to continuously improve our workflow and processes, and UC San Diego is heavily invested in it, and there are tons of resources and opportunities for engagement and learning here. And then BCOP is a networked community brought together by change management, continuous improvement, and project management at UCSD. So if you liked what you saw today, we would love to see you join this group. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. I really hope this session proved to be useful for you. If you are able to rework and implement some of these strategies introduced, I'd love to hear back and see how it worked out. So please don't be shy to reach out. And I think we still have plenty of time for questions. So we'll move over to that part now.
Thank you, Loralyn. What a great presentation. It looks like you already answered 2 of the Q&A, or 2 of the Qs that came in, and there are 3 coming in now. So please keep sending them forward and upvoting, commenting, whatever we can do to help sort the questions. We appreciate it. I'm just gonna start from the top, okay? When clearing out your inbox, how do you handle important emails that contain important information, e.g. need for future reference, and when would you file or categorize the email?
So my best tip for this is for emails that I absolutely know I'm going to have to reference in the future. They're super, super crucial. I do like to use the categories function of Outlook. So for me, it's yellow, and then I have it labeled as important to remember. And then what I do is I just label that and categorize it. So no matter what folder it's in, if I end up going to that folder and I've got hundreds of emails in that folder and I sort by category, the most important ones that I'm going to have to reference often come up at the top of that folder. And then if I'm doing a search and those things come up, it's easy for those to pop out because then you see that they're categorized. So that's usually how I handle that one.
Great. What do you do with email that contains work you need to do, but you can't do right now?
So everybody kind of handles that a little bit differently. Personally, I use my inbox as a to-do list. If it's in my main inbox, it still needs to be dealt with or managed in some way, shape, or form. And for this purpose, I do use categories a lot. So if there's multiple emails in different conversations and chains that have different subjects, but they're kind of all related to one thing, I'll use a bunch of different categories to group them all together and keep them separated. And then I don't move it out of my inbox until I've handled it and managed it. So if it's not in my inbox, then it's filed away for some other point in time. So that's how I manage the priorities and emails.
Ooh, this one I can definitely relate to. When I come back from vacation, my email is completely overwhelming part of getting back to work. Any tips?
I love this one because it is so overwhelming. I mean, you come back and you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails and you have no idea where to start. So This is one where I go back to the tip of slow down, and it's going to just serve you so much better in the long run. So I will take even a couple of hours, and I know that sounds dramatic, but take a couple of hours and do not reply to a single email. Just take time and kind of orient yourself and glance through, not detailed, but glance through what you've got. Try to look for the conversations that have been ongoing for a while so you can catch up with where they started and where they're currently at now. Just get a sense for everything that's going on. Then after you kind of have a sense for what's going on, then you can start to work through the emails. And then for that, what I typically like to do is I try to, I'm a big checklist person. So taking something off the checklist really makes me feel good, right? So then what I do is I try to tackle some easy wins, right? Those are the low-hanging fruit. Tackle some emails that will only take a minute or two to just take care of and then get it out of your inbox. So then you spend maybe 30 minutes tackling those really easy, short, quick ones. Well, then that decreases the overall volume that you're really working with. And so then as a third step, then you can get down to the nitty gritty of like the ones that are really going to require more time, more work, more attention. And then I kind of tackle it that way.
Thank you. Elizabeth Lamb asks, may I ask how your email count is nowadays?
So I'd have to refer back. I can't remember off the top of my head the percentage, but if I'm remembering properly, we actually decreased the volume of emails by at least 35% overall by doing this. And so we still get a lot of emails, but it's more in the range of about 200 a day as opposed to 300 plus a day, which makes all the difference if, when it's that many.
Thank you. Can you talk more about your Six Sigma training?
Sure. I like to refer to my Six Sigma training as a language that was always in me, but I never knew how to speak. So I feel like in my entire life, I've always really loved trying to figure out the most efficient way to do something. When I look at something, I'm like, oh, we could tweak that and that would, be easier. I love templates that I can refer to for future use. I love organization and all things like that. And I thought for a while, maybe I could go into project management because that was kind of similar. And then I was actually introduced to Lean Six Sigma through Bob Neward's office in OSI, which is Operational Strategic Initiatives, coming through the CFO's office. And they sponsor Lean Six Sigma and sponsor scholarships. And they've really brought Lean Six Sigma to campus. So that's how I was originally introduced to it. And then once I found it, I was like, oh my gosh, these are my people. This is my world. This is my language. So I was really, really determined at that point to kind of learn more about it. So I signed up for and took the green belt training and got my green belt. And then I couldn't get enough. So I knew that I wanted to go on for my black belt. And so then I got my black belt too. So that was my journey.
Thanks. The next one is not really a question, but they say they wish they could avoid having people email at all hours of the day and night. They receive emails from high-level people sometimes at 9, 10 p.m. It's out of control. Any comments?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's so hard, right? For some of these people, they're so busy that they're in Zoom meetings all day, and so they can't get to their emails until all hours of the night and on the weekend. I think the key here is for leadership. It's easy to tell who the great leaders are because they will go out of their way to acknowledge that, and they will say, you might get emails from me at all hours of the night and on the weekend. I don't expect you to answer them. So that's kind of the key thing. The hope is that our leadership realize that and acknowledge that, and they understand that based on their own schedule, that's what has to happen. But hopefully they don't have the expectation that everybody else is also functioning under the same.
I would think that would happen more nowadays, right? Especially with us telecommuting and then with childcare. Sometimes you
Absolutely.
just can't get to that time.
Yep.
What strategy do you suggest for getting years of email under control?
Well, there was a time when we were limited by the total size of our email inboxes, and that was a problem. Does anybody remember getting the notification saying your mailbox is almost full, you're going to be cut off? And so then you have to do a search for your ginormous um, emails and then cut those out. But this is kind of one of those things. I'm thinking of the Chinese saying that the best time to start growing a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time to start growing it is now, right? So what I've tended to do over the years, because I've been here long enough and I've worked at a lot of different departments, is I control that with folders. So part of my email management is creating folders that if at some point in time I'm no longer part of that department anymore, I can kind of archive them off to the side or delete them altogether if they're not going to have any importance to me in the future. I mean, beyond that, it's definitely a big problem, and that could be a whole nother presentation right there, is just all the different ways that we would have to tackle, an email inbox that's been going on for a decade. But
Thank you. The next question actually hits on your folders creating statement you made. Do you have any tips when creating these folders and categories?
it's a very personal thing, and it really depends on how your workflow is set up. I have worked with people whose brains function by date. And so what they will do is they will not create categories of folders and emails according to subject, but they will create them according to deadline and date that they need some kind of an action item. And that works really great for those people. That doesn't work for me because my brain needs a closet to hang the clothes in first, and then I can start hanging the different clothes, and then I need to have them organized by color, and season. So it's a really personal question. And again, that's another one that, we could get into a whole nother presentation just based on that. But I would say you have to figure out what's going to work best for you. You'll have to figure out how your brain works and what the best way to categorize things would be. And then just kind of think through from there what is going to allow you to navigate your email most easily.
That relates to the next question, actually, on how general or specific are your folders. Do you have an example? Just a quick example.
So for instance, here's an example. So Research Affairs manages a number of general campus ORUs, which are organized research units. And there's, like 15 or 20 of them. And they have to be reviewed on a specific schedule. So I have a general ORU folder. And then under that folder, now this is kind of going back on what I said before about typically not having dates categorized for things. I will then have a folder for the year that they will be reviewed. And then under that one, I'll have the 3 or 4 ORUs that are reviewed during that year, because typically emails related to that ORU, there's radio silence and nothing unless they're being reviewed that particular year, and they're only reviewed every several years. So in that case, ORUs, the year that they're being reviewed, and then the specific ORUs under that. So for another example, I have, an administration folder, and then under that I'll have performance evaluations and, timekeeping and things of that nature. So I, a lot of times will set mine up based on subject that makes sense that I can get to, and then sometimes if it makes sense and it helps me further organize, then I'll set it up by, sometimes deadlines or dates.
Heather asks, do you clear out your inbox every day?
I would love to, right? How fantastic would that be if every single day at the end of the day I'm able to clear out my inbox? No, I don't. I don't know anybody that can. But it is a ongoing cycle, right? So if a new email comes up, it kind of hovers there for how many ever days or sometimes even weeks that it takes to clear that topic out. And then older ones are cleared out and newer ones come in. And that's when I manage using the categories. So if I have an ongoing topic or issue that starts spanning for days and weeks, and I don't want it to clutter up all of the top of my inbox because that's the new stuff that's coming in that I kind of need to keep an eye on, that's when I'll start to use the categories to file them and record them, to organize them in different areas later. And then as I have breaks where I kind of get on top of the new stuff coming in and triage that, I'll review all of the different categories below to revisit where I am with that particular task or situation, and then follow up if needed, until I clear it out.
Sounds good. My first line of defense is filters. How does that fit in for you?
Are we talking about filters as far as using rules to go ahead and send stuff to specific places automatically?
Probably.
Probably. That one's tough for me because for me, if it's not in my inbox, then it's out of sight, out of mind, and I don't really think about it. That really works for a lot of people. I would say, I do use rules, however, and we use them in the Vice Chancellor's email a lot. So the time that I think is best to use these is when you have a standardized email that's coming from a specific location or has a specific subject that doesn't require immediate attention, and usually you're just either it's just tracking the information, or you're being copied on it, or it's documentation, and there's usually not an action item for you. Generally, that's when I will use rules to automatically file something away, so then I don't have to do that. So that's kind of my rule of thumb there, is I use rules if I don't need to review it and then I don't need to action item it. I can save myself the work and then the rule just automatically files it away. But if I'm going to need to look at it, review it, action item it, do something with it, then I don't want it to do that, because then it's out of sight, out of mind, and I'll forget about it and never even realize that it went there.
Cindy Moore actually made a comment on that question. And basically at the end, she asks, are there some strategies that, have you run into problems needing to reference now deleted emails?
I have not. I'm trying to think if there's, I tend to be pretty weary of, I'm not like a crazy deleter. I do keep a lot of emails. So I guess my answer there would just be, if you're finding that that is the case, then maybe don't delete as, be a little bit more careful about what you're deleting if you find that that's the case. Because of course it's a balance, right? So if you're finding that you're deleting emails and then needing to reference them later, then, maybe don't trim the tree as much. And then the other trick for that too, what I do is for my deleted emails, I let them sit in my deleted box for a while. I don't clear that folder out like super regularly. I'll usually only clear it out every so often, and I'll make sure that I leave like a couple of weeks or even a month at a time in my deleted folder, because then that gives you the opportunity to bring it back up if you need it. I mean, the likelihood that if you deleted it and you need it back, it's a higher likelihood that you might need it recently, or that it might come up sooner. And so then there's less of a likelihood that that is an issue, and then it's safer to delete it, after a month has passed, and that's probably, not happening anymore.
Elizabeth Lamb asked an interesting question, actually. What are your thoughts on the bottom line up? I often use that where the question or the FYI is the literal first line of the email, and then the rest of the info is supportive information.
I think this is great because they do say that the most important information or the ask should be the very first thing at the beginning of the email, because then people start to scan and lose stuff down the way. Sometimes flow wise, that is really difficult to do. So then what I'll do is I'll use formatting to kind of call out the important parts. So I'll either highlight things or bold them or use italics. And again, this is a place where if you feel like there is a high likelihood that somebody is going to misread or misconstrue what the ask is, or that it's going to be confusing, or that there's going to be a miscommunication, those are the times when I love to sit on it for a day, draft it out, come back in a couple of hours, come back the next day if it's not super time sensitive, ask somebody else to read it. I'd love to do this with my entire team, because you know what you're trying to communicate, right? But somebody else might not, and our brains all work differently. So I love sending drafts around between my team to be like, okay, I have this draft, how do you take this? Or like, how would you read this? Because then they can provide input. And so many times I'm like, oh, I see how you would think that. That totally wasn't where I was at, but I see how that could be miscommunicated. Let me rework the wording so that that's more clear.
Do you have a recommendation on when to choose not to use email? Example, pick up the phone when there's more than X number of back and forth.
So like I said, it depends on the team, but for my team, we kind of have a priority list. So for us, text is like the most urgent. Text is like, oh my gosh, this needs to be handled like right now. I need to get a hold of you right now. So text and like direct phone call is super urgent. Then we have been using Microsoft Teams, which is new, and that's replaced the old chat system of the Skype, Skype for Business. And we really like Teams. That tends to be sort of the middle of the road. So that's going to be stuff that definitely needs to be addressed within, the next hour or two, or that we should all know about like right now. But it's not worth an email. It's not worth documenting. It's not worth hanging on to. So that's when we're using Teams. And then certainly, as alluded to in the question, if there's X number of back and forth, I mean, that's where I said in my presentation, any email that has more than 5 responses back and forth, to me, that's a time when you want to consider that email chain and think, was there a more efficient communication method for this? Because, 5 emails that, if you have 10 chains that have 5 emails back and forth, well, then there you go. That's, almost your volume for the day.
How do you manage listservs that may be the point of communication for work actions or deadlines?
I'm assuming this one is talking about listservs that are adding to the volume of emails and you don't necessarily feel like they're urgent, or you don't always need to action item. This is a time where I would call back to that other to the other person who asked about the rules. I absolutely use rules for listservs. So if you have a listserv that's very, very busy and there's a lot of stuff going through there and you don't want to see it day to day because it just clutters things up, have a folder for that entire listserv and have that rule directly filter all of those listserv emails into that folder. And then if you do find, like I had mentioned before, that you're kind of forgetting about it or that you're missing crucial things because you're not going to it, just set yourself a reminder, set yourself a weekly reminder, put it on your calendar to go revisit that folder and catch up on everything that's been going on, in that little realm for the time being.
Is there a way to flag email to auto delete after X amount of time?
I believe there is. I would have to look into the details of it, but I know that I've seen that option clicking around and looking at my in my Outlook anyway. I can't remember what Outlook calls it, but I think it's an auto archive function. So I would have to look into that further, but what I love to say about the Microsoft suite of products is that, yes, the answer is always yes. There's always a way to do whatever it is that you think you need. They've already figured it out, and there's a tool somewhere and a setting somewhere to do it. It's just where it is and how it functions and what the limitations are. So I'd like to, I'll look into that.
There's another question about the presentation, actually. They're having issues accessing it. Is there another way to access it, or do we have to make it public? What, do you know what's going on with the slides that we posted in the chat?
Did anybody else have trouble accessing it?
Take a looky. Nope, it looks like I'm in. So maybe that person just needs to check.
You know what? For that person, if you had trouble, just go ahead and email me and I'll email it to you. I'll send it to you.
Well, it's 12:51. Do we have any more questions? It looks like something just came in. Not really a question, but every email sent uses energy to transmit it. So less email will reduce carbon emissions. Yes,
Yep.
anonymous attendee. Very good. I actually have my own question. So colleagues of mine and I sometimes disagree on the best way to display emails. Do you prefer the single display or the thread display? Please
This is so contentious. This is an ongoing debate, and I myself have like an inner fight about what the best thing is. I fought against conversation mode for so long. I could not stand it. My brain couldn't make sense of it. I couldn't figure out what was where. It was just absolute chaos for me, and I just couldn't even deal with it. I recently have adopted conversation mode. And so it just took me kind of sorting out and figuring out how it displays and how it's showing emails that are in different folders, but part of that conversation. I have come across colleagues that are so dedicated to conversation mode that they will not change the subject because it'll mess up their conversation mode. And then to me, that's super problematic, because what if you have an email that's now literally a completely different, totally different subject, and then it doesn't even make sense with the subject because, you know, people are using conversation mode. So I think it's definitely a balance there. And I do use conversation mode now, but I don't rely on it 100%. And so that's where the categories come into play. So I really use both categories and conversation mode to kind of group things together. So I would say, you know, that maybe a balance, you know, or a combination of both of them. But yeah, that is a contentious debate there.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Last call for questions.
So I think we have another poll, and I think I know the answer to this one. I was curious after this presentation today if I did get somebody beforehand saying, hey, I could really use some just general tips on specific tips, tricks, strategies for organizing and managing your own email in Outlook. And so my question is, would a good follow-up presentation be, would you be interested in specific tips and tricks and strategies for actually organizing and managing your own email, not talking about how you use it with your teams and as a tool that way. And I think I know the answer to that, because a lot of the questions were actually related to how people independently manage their emails. So I'm curious to see if people will be interested in a follow-up with that. Okay, let's go ahead and close it. So get in your yes or no. People are interested. That's so exciting. Well, I'll start working on it.
Yay.
We'll do a follow-up.
Yay, thank you. There's actually one more debate that came in. Which is better, desktop or web version?
The desktop has more features. So I think for most situations, desktop is going to beat it. However, I can speak from experience, and my IT team, who is amazing. Shout out to my IT team, Bernard and Carla and David. You guys are my men. But sometimes because we have so many people that are accessing multiple mailboxes on different devices, there are a lot of times issues because the web is the server. That's the true information. So we have had a lot of problems with devices not displaying updated information, updated emails, updated calendar items, because it thinks that it's updated, but that's not actually what's on the server. The rules have functioned the same way. We have to do all of the rules from the web, from the server, because if we try to do it on a device, that's only one of the devices. So that's another one where I'm going to say I'm not going to pick sides. you can tell I'm like a person in the middle. So I would say for features, definitely the desktop is best, but there are some situations where the server, because that's where the true information and data is stored, that you have to rely on that.
Someone asked if you could be their mentor, but they submitted as an anonymous attendee, so we're not sure.
Yes, reach out to me by email. I'd be happy to continue the conversation offline.
And someone also mentioned they would like to hear more about creating and editing rules.
Yes, so I will add that to my list on the next presentation for email management. I will make sure to add that in.
And Karen, you wrote follow-up for Google. Was there a question there? Did you need us to answer anything? Was it about the slides?
It might just be a question regarding using Google email.
Okay.
Because if I'm not mistaken, I know that a lot of our engineering school, I think that they use Google for everything, including email and calendars. I don't really have an answer there. I mean, of course, I use Gmail and Google for my own personal email, but I feel like I would be completely lost if I tried to use it for my work. There's just not quite the same functionality there, and that's not a great answer. It is unfortunate that campus has multiple systems that that are used and supported, and so sometimes that does cause issues.
One person asks, how does Outlook groups work?
Are we Outlook groups? I'm either not as familiar with that function, or because I'm assuming that that's not like Microsoft Teams. I'll have to look into that because I'm not sure how Microsoft groups work. I'm not really familiar with that tool.
Well, Loralyn, those are all the questions that came through. I want to thank you for your insights and time with us today. I would like to thank our captionists. And of course, thank you for attending. Please refer to campuslisa.ucsc for more information. And we hope to see everyone at our 6th Campus Lisa webinar next week. Have a great day, everyone.